This time I'll be talking about Niviuk's new ultralight racing paraglider, the Klimber 3P. P stands for plume, as in feather, because it's a featherlight. The Klimber 3P comes in a really nice optimized concertina packing bag, ultralight concertina packing bag. Klimber 3P is aimed at experienced and ambitious pilots looking for an ultralight high-performance wing for hike and fly and cross-country flying and racing. So thanks to Flybubble friend and our customer, he's been kind enough to lend me the glider for a few days so I could give it a really good test and get to know it well. Thanks, Phil. Let's start with construction. The construction of the Klimber 3P, like I think all Niviuk gliders nowadays, is absolutely top-notch. The materials, the stitching, the details and the finish are absolutely top of the class. So on the launch, overall I think the Klimber 3P is pretty easy for the class. Actually in easy to moderately tricky conditions, I think it's very easy for the class. It's only when the conditions get very demanding, and the most demanding conditions, when it's very strong and gusty, then I think that some finesse is required on the launch, particularly with not pulling the glider up too hard, and it comes up very nicely. It really doesn't need to be pulled up hard, so it requires a bit of finesse there. And also, probably more importantly, the stall point. If you pull the glider up too hard and then you're trying to catch it and stop it, if you're too heavy-handed, then you might end up stalling the glider. Actually, I found it a real pleasure to launch and kite and ground handle. In fact, I was having a load of fun with the Klimber 3P just on the ground. To get an idea, for me, I found that on launch and ground handling, I feel like the Klimber 3P is a little bit more demanding than the Omega Xl3, the Omega ULS, and the F-Scala Lite, and sort of on a par with the Zeolite GT. Talking about the brakes, the brake pressure is moderate to slightly firm. On the firmer side, it's not light and I don't find it heavy. So yeah, it's neither light nor heavy. For me, the brake pressure is just right, really excellent control and precision, and it's got good feeling through the brakes. Similar to the Omega Xl3 and the Zeolite GT, and a bit firmer than the Omega ULS and the F-Scala Lite. The brake travel is moderate, and it's certainly not long, maybe a little bit on the shorter side, but it's got a nice brake travel, not really long, so your arms and hands are down here for steering, needing to take more wraps, as you are with the Omega ULS. Yeah, for the Klimber 3P, I find that the stall pressure is kind of moderate to slightly on the lighter side, and I think that it feels a little easier to stall than, say, the Omega Xl3 and the Omega ULS, which have a higher brake pressure. You feel more of a resistance. Despite the actual brakes and handling on those gliders being a bit lighter, as you get down to the stall point, the glider firms up more, and you have kind of a more obvious build-up in pressure and a bit more warning before the glider actually stalls compared to the Klimber 3P. So the Klimber 3P, I feel, requires a little bit more finesse and sensitivity than those gliders. Having said that, the stall is totally fine for the class and ultralight END glider. Moving on to handling. So my feeling is that the agility is moderate to pretty good. So the Klimber 3P is definitely not a slow turning glider that you feel like, come on, round you go. It's a nice, responsive and slightly sporty feeling glider without being at all too kind of dynamic and a handful. I feel like the Klimber 3P is more agile than the Omega Xl3 and the Zeolite GT. The agility is quite similar to the Omega ULS, but with much shorter brakes. And I think the agility is a bit less than the Scala Lite. Moving on to the B-riser control, the pressure on the B-risers of the Klimber 3P I found to be moderate. There was a very good feeling through the riser, a good feeling with the glider and a good connection to the glider. And I felt like I could use them a lot to fly actively. Speed system on the Klimber 3P is quite noticeably quite long. So the travel on the size 21, for example, is 200 millimeters. So 20 centimeters, which is quite a long travel. The speed system is moderate pressure, I found, very usable. You have a nice progressive range through it. A nice feature on the Klimber 3P has got marks on the line, on the speed bar line, so you can keep the speed bar lines even on either side, and it's quite easy pilots using quite a bit of speed bar know it's quite easy to get them a little bit asymmetric. So those lines are quite a nice touch, nice feature. Also felt like the top speeds felt very quick. The speed increase I saw was around 16 kilometers an hour, I think, something like that. But it was quite thermic active air, so it's quite difficult to get it to a steady speed. It kept sort of moving up and down as I was being bounced around. But the key thing I felt was it felt, yeah, really quick. I think it's a little bit quicker than the Omega X-Alps 3 and also the Omega ULS and the Zeolite GT. I think the top speed is quite similar to the FIS Scala Light, which is quite fast, again for the class, but I think that the Klimber 3P is more efficient, i.e. it's got a better glide and a better sink rate. Of course, using the speed system in combination with the B risers, that works really, really well. And actually I found once you had the speed system on, you can use the B risers for steering even without the speed system on if you just want to make little adjustments to be very efficient in your turns when you're soaring and just gliding and thermaling, if you just want to change your course. But on the speed bar again, you can use it both for active piloting and also just for adjusting your speed to be most efficient as your headwind and sink changes. In terms of performance, my impression from gliding with quite a lot of other gliders, the performance is really excellent for the class and right at the top of the light END class there, and very comparable to the Omega ULS from what I could see. And as I say, with the Klimber 3P possibly having an edge on the top speed. I have to be honest, I have to confirm that, but that was my feeling. The Klimber 3P seems to climb really, really well, even well loaded, even loaded right at the top, and even when I overloaded the glider. In addition, due to the agility and the handling and its nice thermaling abilities, it's a really good climber. So the name fits very well. On glide, it felt really excellent. Actually, both of the Klimber 3P and the Omega ULS, I'm really impressed. The things definitely seem to have taken a step forward, and the performance is really impressive. Gliding next to some pilots on the Xeno 2s, we have a few of them in our area, and that's a good sort of benchmark to look at. And the Xeno 2s may have a slight edge. I think they might have a slight edge over them, but not by much. Moving on to descent techniques. So I didn't try classic big ears on the Klimber 3P. I just did B3s descent techniques, so tip stalls. To be honest, very straightforward, not much to report. The usual kind of high pressure you expect, quite similar to the Arctic R. They were very effective and quite stable and very usable. Spirals, first thing to mention is, since this is a light wing, and because it belonged to someone else, it's not my glider, I didn't do any hard spirals on the Klimber 3P. Really nothing unusual to report, very straightforward, and as usual with light gear, it's best not to do too many high G maneuvers like spirals, and if not, avoid them completely. And moving on to wingovers. If you've watched a number of my reviews, then you probably know that I like doing wingovers. I enjoy wingovers. I also really enjoy doing spirals and other maneuvers like that. Due to the very high stability, the good agility, and the very good energy conversion of the Klimber 3P, I found it really excellent for wingovers. Again, I resisted the urge of doing too many wingovers and not doing them too hard, since the glider is a lightweight glider and not ours. So in summary, as you can probably tell from the review, I'm really impressed with the Klimber 3P, and that's because of its exceptional combination of weight, performance, relative ease of use, very fun handling, and it's very enjoyable to fly, and plus the fact that it only weighs 3 kilos and packs up teeny weeny. It's amazing. For those who like to know, you've probably worked it out, but I also personally really like this glider. But on this note, it's worth mentioning that buying a wing just because somebody else likes it is often a mistake. So that's never a good reason to buy a glider. It's good to gather feedback from other pilots, but don't buy a glider because your mate likes it, or some pilot says they like it. It's really about getting the right match of wing for you. And this is exactly why, when we're recommending equipment, especially gliders and harnesses, to our customers, then we are very careful to not let our own personal preferences cloud our judgment, and it's very important that we understand their requirements. So hope you enjoyed it, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.